Hi and welcome to SAP Purpose Network Live, a virtual platform fostering collaboration and conversations on the challenges and opportunities to create positive impact, with a focus today on addressing solutions to the disruptions. Hi and welcome to SAP Purpose Network Live, a virtual platform fostering collaboration and conversations on the challenges and opportunities to create positive impact, with a focus today on addressing solutions to the disruptions caused by COVID-19. We invite you to be part of a global community of purpose-driven leaders and social change makers raising ambitions to scale impact for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Hear thought leaders and inspiring examples on how organizations innovate with purpose enabled by SAP solutions, and learn how you can benefit from purpose-focused SAP programs, events, and initiatives. Each week, we convene and profile thought leaders, influencers, customers, partners, and entrepreneurs on how we can work together on the core themes aligned to the SDGs. Today, we are hosting the session, The Cognitive Procurement Enterprise. And I'd like to introduce you all to Charlotte Brabandt. She's book author, TEDx speaker, and a world-renowned technology speaker with global industry experience, and will be moderating this conversation. Charlotte?
Thank you so much, Adelia, for your kind introduction. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm here based in Manhattan, and firstly, I would like to introduce to you today's panelists for today's discussion. Firstly, we have David Chen, Harvard Business School grad, focuses on investing in AI and technology ventures through Angel West and Harvard Business School alumni angels. We have David Meltzer from California, co-founder of Sports One Marketing and host of Entrepreneurs One #1 podcast, The Playbook. David is the former CEO of Blake Steinberg Sports and Entertainment, which was the inspiration for the movie Jerry Maguire. And most recently, David was awarded the most valuable philanthropist at the Super Bowl. And we have Lawrence de Brabandt. Lawrence is philanthropist and world explorer. He has worked to encourage and implement sustainable tourism since his early teens. He has traveled to help over 90 countries and has most recently been awarded the 21st Century Icon Award for his activity in working towards human development goals at the end of last year. And through the Brabandt Foundation, he has been pioneering a collaborative approach between governments and hospitality groups to promote sustainable tourism and oversee projects within that sphere in over 30 countries. And his foundation's mission is to support projects that have a positive impact on the people and communities affected by tourism, to protect wildlife, marine life, and also to encourage the hospitality industry and governments to care for the planet that we call home. And now to our keynote. Today's session is about cognitive procurement. We have a fantastic speaker from London, a good friend of mine, Marco Romano, joining us. And he will be talking about one of his greatest passions. And as individuals and communities, we rely on products and services to navigate our daily lives. And now, more than ever before, we need those products and services to help us solve new problems that are rapidly emerging as the global COVID-19 crisis unfolds. This doesn't only apply to social good groups or products, it applies to everything. In the coming weeks and months, people will be doing things differently. Everything from how people make their livelihood, to how they purchase goods, how they purchase food, to how they move from place to place, and how they navigate throughout their social, financial, physical, and mental health needs. It will all look different. The next big shift in business architectures is happening right now. We have pervasive applications in place with exponential technologies such as artificial intelligence, automation, blockchain, and also the Internet of Things, IoT, to transform core workflows. Organizations need to re-engineer workflows to enable the use of these exponential technologies, to enable instant insights, and to fundamentally change the user experience both internally and externally to the organization. And especially integration across organizational boundaries will exponentially increase value and enhance performance, and curating high quality data will deliver actionable insights and outcomes. And today, our guest speaker, Marco, he applies more than 20 years of experience as a procurement practitioner and project manager, and is responsible for the IBM source-to-pay digital transformation, including data, analytics, and cognitive strategy and implementation. Marco joined IBM in South Africa before moving to the UK in 1999 to join the procurement organization. Prior to working with IBM, Marco held positions in the IT and insurance sector. He has a degree in finance and auditing and is very much involved with the Project Management Institute. Welcome, Marco. Over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Well, that is quite the introduction, and a warm hello to everyone on the call. And of course, thank you for having me. Honestly, it's a real privilege to share the stage with such esteemed people as yourselves. So thank you. Let me start here. So, Charlotte's made it very, stated the obvious, right? COVID has changed many things in really short space of time. Impact has been profound, and procurement organizations and supply chains certainly not been exempt from scrutiny and from the effect. Specifically, we've seen decreased demand, increased supply chain risk, structural costs that are out of line with future revenues, and of course, significant increased uncertainty. And the response of procurement and supply chains is not only essential, but as we've said, under severe scrutiny. So when you look at the response, typically what is it? Optimizing cash flow, reducing operating expense, protecting cash, right? Minimizing capital expenditure, at least for the foreseeable future. But here's the thing. We've got to continue to invest and prioritize transformation initiatives that deliver insights, and then really our ability to have foresight or have predictability that allows us to plan for deeper resiliency within these supply chains. But when I think about these responses, they are no different to what procurement should be doing anyway. So sure, the spotlight is on these responses, and there's an expectation of more urgency. There's no question. But I really do think this is what we should be doing anyway. And I know, many organizations started that journey pre-COVID. A recent enterprise survey by the Everest Group asked the question, which was interesting. The question really was, what will you do differently after the crisis has abated? And the responses, whilst interesting, were not entirely surprising. More continuity planning, which you'd expect in the event of a crisis. Eliminate unnecessary processes. More work from home options. And more automation were the top items. So put COVID aside for a second, because it certainly changes the immediate need and near-term sort of focus. But fundamentally, it doesn't alter that transformation journey. It rather highlights the urgency for that continued transformation. So when I talk about transformation, what do I really mean? Procurement has some fantastic strengths. We need to leverage those historic strengths with new technologies and processes that really reshape the competitive positions and move us towards becoming that cognitive enterprise. There are some key components that I would say are necessary for procurement to make that journey. First important one is business platforms. Really leveraging data as the new currency across organizational boundaries. And you'll hear me talk about that multiple times. The ability to have transparent exchange of information, not just within our organization, across business units within the organization and across organizational boundaries, I think is exceptionally important, normal times, but even more so in times of crises. The second is about intelligent workflows. So really infusing end-to-end, front-to-back processes with these exponential technologies that allow us to deliver exceptional outcomes and differentiation for the business. And the third one, and really important, is recognition that none of this will succeed if we don't embed and infuse these processes with a compelling user experience for all of the stakeholders involved in that process. Now, the concept of platforms is nothing new, right? People think of eBay, Facebook as examples of platforms. But we're seeing and will continue to see market-making business platforms grow, create frictionless exchanges, and facilitate interactions that, again, you're going to hear me say it, traverse organizational boundaries. Well-crafted business platforms enable a transparency and a trust, both of which are critical to have close customer and supplier relationships, absolutely critical, again, in times of crises. I listen to people talking and describing procurement's role, and one of the things that very often I hear people saying, well, procurement's role starts at the receipt of a request from an internal client. And I tell you, I couldn't agree more. My view is that's way too reactive for procurement to really be effective. We need to be asking ourselves the question, how can I understand my internal client's needs and my customer needs and aggregate those, aggregate the needs, the demand, such that I can act strategically and do it well ahead of the actual physical requests that come in during the normal course of business. Understanding that demand, acting on it, even influencing it, is where I really need to be thinking. But to do this, I have to cross traditional silos within the four walls of my organization. I have to facilitate a data exchange and process integration with the very business units that I'm solutioning for. That leads me nicely onto the second piece that I talked about, which is intelligent workflows. So business platforms will only be as effective as the intelligence and the innovation that the workflows within them allow. So people say to me, well, what makes a workflow intelligent, right, Marcus? So workflows are made intelligent by the application at scale of these exponential technologies that we're always talking about to transform that process effectiveness, and very importantly, to allow us to mine value from this vast amount of proprietary data that we have within the organizations and we have within procurement. But I'll say this, it's not about simply adding RPA, AI, or cognitive on top of existing processes. And why? Procurement organizations generally, whenever I'm talking to peers out in the industry, have added layer upon layer of processes, checks and balances, some for good reason, some forced on us by, audit, tax, compliance, but they don't all lend themselves well to intelligent workflows. And I do worry that with the uncertainties and the risks that COVID has brought into the environment, we have a tendency to layer further complexity on top of those processes. So when we talk about the cognitive enterprise, we really need to step back, reimagine how we do work. And I really do believe that starts by mapping the as-is processes, the personas within that process, the pain points that these very people experience interacting with that process. And then through IX design, with the very stakeholders that are part of that process in the room, you build something from the ground up that really redefines that North Star for the procurement organization. And when I talk stakeholders, I'm not limiting it to buyers. I'm including buyers, clients, suppliers, auditors. I'm including tax, legal. So I'm really looking across the organization so that the process design lends itself to well-orchestrated and integrated workflows, on top of which you then apply AI, cognitive automation, blockchain, 5G. I mean, the list really goes on. Of course, you don't get any of this without data, right? Absolutely critical that the organization has a robust data strategy which looks at how the organization acquires data, how you enrich and curate that data, and ultimately how that data is consumed in a way that generates real business value. Let me go back to the exponential technologies because we throw those words around quite liberally, but what do we mean? So AI, blockchain, cognitive capabilities have been increasingly pervasive within the procurement space for some time. I really do, and it's obvious we will see more of this, and a few of the areas that I think will be of real importance as we go forward, particularly post-COVID, will be things like, for example, contract and contract management. AI in contract authoring and management tremendously reduces the amount of time buyers spend analyzing and managing contracts, but also importantly, help us to reduce risk by continuously monitoring performance against those contracts. And what I would say, create actionable insights, actionable dashboards that allow us to look at that entire corpus of contracts, which is really difficult to do without technology, right? So the ability for us to look at, whether it's 10 contracts, 100 contracts, or 100,000 contracts, and consistently monitor and understand risks and opportunities in those contracts against our actual course of business is extremely powerful. We use AI in applications that help us to predict competitive pricing for in-flight deals. And think about it, in a time of market volatility, again, extremely powerful, but there's so much more that we can do in that space. Risk management tools are predicting impact on supply chains caused by weather and other events. And again, the volume of risks and I guess the types of risks continue to increase. So much more that can be done there. And the last one I want to touch on here is blockchain. We hear blockchain being talked about increasingly. We see it specifically for things like supplier onboarding, which we know is extremely painful for many organizations. We see it for robust and transparent tracking and tracing of raw materials and products through the supply chain. So blockchain already becoming pervasive and of course, so much more to go. So when I look back at all of those technologies, COVID absolutely focuses our attention and highlights the need to further augment our risk management, our prediction and scenario analysis with AI. I think it further highlights the need to work across those organizational boundaries that I've talked about to create more transparency and the ability to act with speed, right? So clearly, one of the things that's come out of this is our ability to react and react very quickly. But the last one I want to talk about is user experience. I've touched on it a little bit already, but also how these exponential technologies can help us to elevate the work and the skills of the employees within the procurement organization. So, user experience. It does not start and stop with how we interact with the tool, which is typically where people go. People think user experience, they think, oh, it's how I interface with the tool. User experience for me really is the whole process, right? It's how I interact with each other, the process, the technology, and even the data itself. And being a big fan of data, people will say, okay, you always go to data. How's data got anything to do with user experience? I'll give you a real practical example. If I cannot provide consistent, reliable data results that my practitioners can trust to make business decisions on, business decisions that affect tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, it doesn't matter how great the interface looks, the user experience and the business results will be poor, right? There'll be tremendous frustration. Ultimately, the capability will fail, not because it looks bad, but because no one will trust it to make business decisions. So it's critical that as we build this cognitive procurement enterprise, the very people using the process and the technology are in there designing it with us and are part of that design thinking process, which is something that we, very much adopt as part of our development. You get significantly more buy-in. That team that is part of the development act as agents of change, facilitating change management, and not just within the procurement organization, but also within your client base and even your suppliers. Naturally, with all of this change comes a need for us to ensure that our employees are transitioning their skills, because you can apply AI, you can apply cognitive, you can apply all of these things, but we really need to transition the skills of our practitioners, and not just so that they survive within their jobs, but so that they can take advantage of how these technologies augment their performance, right? Because it's really important. We're not applying these technologies to replace the buyer. We're applying these technologies to augment the performance of those practitioners. So soft skills, consulting skills, data and business analyst type skills become increasingly important. They will add to the user experience. They will add to the job satisfaction of those practitioners, and of course, better business outcomes. Now, I'm going to start wrapping up because I know I'm probably running out of time here, Charlotte. So, I've talked through many topics, right? And all of these really could be a discussion all on their own. But I'll summarize my view of the cognitive procurement organization as follows. Develop a transformation roadmap that leverages this new platform economy and really puts the user at the ecosystem center. Develop intelligent workflows by reimagining first how you do work and then applying the exponential technologies on top of that reimagined process. Change the skills or upgrade the skills of the team fast, adding those consultative type skills, the data savvy people, and people that have that transformation mindset, because that is really, really important. And focus on the user experience, both in terms of developing processes and tools. So I'll wrap up with this. Whilst AI is absolutely critical, it's a catalyst and really an accelerator, I do believe that to arrive at this cognitive enterprise environment, it's a combination of people, process, data, and technology.
Marco, that was so well summed up. Thank you so much for your incredible keynote. It's so inspiring, and everything you said, it was like music in my ear, being myself in procurement for nearly 12 years. So just some short follow-up questions just for you. Maybe you have some short answers for us, and then I will open up the panel afterwards. But what you just said, all of it, it sounds so interesting, but it sounds like it requires a large amount of significant investments, the magic word. What would you say to anyone wanting to start this journey, and how to get these financials ready, and how to get, most importantly, C-suite backing that is needed?
Yeah. So Charlotte, I think you actually want to start small, right? The concept of trying to solution everything is a dangerous one, and you probably achieve very little, and you end up with big pitfalls. So I would say start small. Typically, the way we approach it is, as I said, with design thinking. So really understanding what are those few impactful changes that you can make that are going to drive real change to the practitioners, right? And the reason we do that from the ground up is because invariably the changes that are needed by the practitioners are not the same changes that middle or senior management think is what's needed, right? So start small. Focus on data, yes, absolutely, but it can be incremental, small deliverables that make change. I will say this, I would encourage people to use third parties. Don't try and build everything in-house, because you can do very small POCs that are relatively low cost, that can help you to very quickly return value to the business and show your stakeholders that ROI, which then encourages, again, further investment.
Yeah, third parties, very good point. This reminds me of one of the other podcasts we had on cybersecurity. So every time you use third party, make sure that all of the cybersecurity audits and assessments have been also done. I see the time is truly running. Let's open up the panel. And with no further ado, I'd like to go into our first question. User experience research during the crisis is just evolving rapidly, and understanding user needs to inform responsive design has just become so important. What you used to know about your users may now be contextually invalid. And think about where you were or what you were doing just a few weeks ago. Think about what products you used, when and how you used them. Think about what's happening for you now. We don't live in the same world we did just a matter of days or weeks ago. you know about your users is likely based on experience from before that may not longer exist. And those users are adjusting to this new context in ways you do not yet know or even understand. So how have you experienced this change? Marco, if you would like to start.
Yeah, so Charlotte, I'll answer it selfishly, responding just in terms of the community I service, right, which is the procurement community and the internal clients within the organization. And I'd say we've been fortunate that over the years we've been adopting the technologies and flexible working that's allowed us to pivot very quickly, in terms of that. Naturally, the immediate focus has been on ensuring continuity of service from suppliers, sourcing products to facilitate for this to happen. So there's been an immediate reactive phase, right? But I think we're seeing very quickly already signs of the what's next phase. How do we build the lessons learned from this event, right, into the fabrics of procurement so that we are, ready, right, when the inevitable next crisis will arrive, because there will be one, whether it's a local one or a global one.
Thank you, Marco. And David Meltzer, you have so much contact with all of your users. You inspire our next generation out there every single day, every hour. I follow you a lot, as you know, and I'm just completely inspired by all the messages you have to say. How have you experienced this change?
I think there's three areas. One is the top of the funnel, and wherever human interaction is with the technology, we see acceleration of change. The change was going to come, and now we've been blessed with an acceleration or an accelerator for the top of the funnel. How are we acquiring customers, communicating with customers at the top, and then internally, as Marco is an expert in that workflow, and how our employees are interacting on both sides of the funnel, and then finally the last mile. Now, of course, in the sports world, it's completely turned upside down because there is no user experience. And I think out of all industries, the sports industry, because it's based on mass gatherings, is going through an exponential acceleration to reformat and re-engineer the actual interaction, human interaction with the content. And so I think if you look at all three of those and where human interaction takes place, you'll see extreme acceleration. But it's exciting to me because I think it was inevitable, and we've just sped up the curve, and there will be some great growing pains though. But as you know, as I believe, pain is just an indicator for lessons to be learned. So I'm excited about the lessons we're going to learn.
Oh wow, I love that. I'm going to remember that. Thank you for sharing. And Lawrence, how have you experienced this change?
Yeah, first off, I would like to thank Marco for his wonderful speech. Definitely has made some very, very interesting points. And that last sentence from David, I'll also keep for myself for the usage. But in general, Charlotte, I think that point that you've made about what is now that is no longer contextually valid, I think I completely agree on that point. There's been quite a paradigm shift, I feel, to sustaining communities, focusing ever more on the interpersonal dynamics. And we have to realize that this might not occur in person per se. In my sphere, for us, organizing fundraising events and traveling are key to what our foundation does. We explore where a need for support is and then encourage others to assist us in helping. Now, of course, we're forced into a situation to completely rethink our approach, not only for ourselves and all the people working for us, but all our stakeholders, our donors, the now ever more struggling communities we support and work with. I think what counts now is simply bridging the gap that is now being created, and innovative processes in that approach are going to be key to achieving that.
Thank you so much. And David Chen, what is your opinion here?
Yeah, I'll start out by saying that, number one, I'm not really a procurement expert per se, but ultimately it boils down to the user experience. And if you look at procurement, it's about connecting buyers and sellers, right? And I would say that in many aspects of what we're doing now, it's the same, whether we're doing a call for an investment, we look at new deals, for example, which we're doing. How do we help our companies connect to new investors? How do we help our investor group connect with new deals? And part of it is being able to close the gap. Before, there was a filtering process. You couldn't get to the right investor. You couldn't get to the right companies. But now, I think with this new mode of behavior, using Zoom, using audio, using video, it's actually brought people closer together. It's actually brought more of the buyers and sellers closer. So in that regard, you have a bit of a chaos situation, because before you had very regimented processes, and you kind of knew who you had to go to the next level, the intermediary, before you get to the final ultimate client, right, or supplier. But now it's actually with these new modes of behavior of connecting, peer to peer, that we'll see additional ways that people are connecting that are bypassing the traditional intermediaries, right? So in that regard, I think we'll find new opportunities, and those opportunities means that how do we better automate ourselves, these processes? And the context of this series is about artificial intelligence. How do we better automate what it is that we do? And I think AI will continue to play a role in terms of that level of intelligence. So, for example, that AI could understand who does it want to connect with, who is the best fit if I'm looking for a deal, if I'm an investor looking for a deal, who is the better company that I want to spend my time on to be able to have that conversation. So I think that as we talk about in the context of connectivity, connecting buyers and sellers, or investors and companies, whoever's on two ends of that transaction, I think we'll find new innovative ways that technology can play a role. And I also see this as a time where entrepreneurs are coming out of the box and thinking about new ways to serve that need. And that need will continue to evolve as we see this pandemic play out. And who knows, the pandemic may evolve into something else. So that is the uncertain part of it, but I think that is also the opportunity as we go forward.
Absolutely. And finding out how technology can best work for you. A crisis is just a novel situation, and therefore we don't have a playbook or a mental script which we can follow right now how to handle the situation. And during this current pandemic, when we are truly all afraid of this uncertainty, where we have limited control of the new baseline, of the new normal decision-making and behavioral processes, it all shifts. Our brains, they operate differently when there is a perceived threat. Meaningful decision-making and behaviors are different and just can be unpredictable. What have you done to shift your mindset during this change? David Meltzer. You're on mute.
I'm going to figure this out after the fifth time.
I was so excited about this question because I was only thinking about you here.
Well, of course, what we do is look what we do have control of. And one of those things is the mindset. And so capabilities, both human and technological capabilities, that include skills of the humans and the technology, the knowledge, the database of the technology and the human. And then the one component that I see that we have control of is we give meaning to everything that we see. And I know David Chen is studying the Kabbalah, and he can understand of how we can actually change the way we look at things by the things we look at that we change, right? And so if we apply giving meaning to the capabilities, the skills and knowledge that we have, we actually can come out with an advantage during this time of uncertainty. And all it is compressed uncertainty. The future is uncertain, period. It's just compressed. We've accelerated the growth and the change, and we've compressed uncertainty, which moves us into a more ego-based consciousness because there's more fear. And so if we can regulate that we have control over our skills, our knowledge, both human and technology, and apply that to our desire, we actually can expand and accelerate to the positive just the way that we could by creating void, shortages, and obstacles. And I see there being a great separation. The best line that I've heard was Bob Proctor last night, Charlotte. He said, we're all in the same boat. The problem is everybody's going a different way. I want people to go in the positive way. And I think we all have that capability.
Absolutely, in a positive way, and always full of gratitude.
I echo that comment. So we talk about perceived threats, and what I'm trying to adapt to, my mindset is really about not perceived threats, but rather perceived opportunities. And it's about my meditation. When I meditate and think, what are some of the things that are poking at me in life? And, maybe these are hidden opportunities in disguise. And I think throughout life, we've all seen our own ups and downs. And if we can take advantage of what is perceived to be a threat, then I think we can come out the other end in a thriving situation that have done better. So I think that is the way that we should be looking at things, if we can adjust our mindset to that.
Absolutely, David Chen. That's a fantastic answer, and I think I love that you started Kambala. I've also done transcendental meditation, and it's the mind is like a muscle, I call it. You need to constantly train it. You cannot just expect to become an expert in meditation just over a day. It takes time. And if you just start with a minute or two a day, or if you just start meditating while doing activities you enjoy, like running or cycling, not everyone can just sit in a quiet room and not move. So you need to find your own personal passion, how it best suits you, and how you can, in the best setup, how you can understand your mind the best. But Lawrence, what do you have to say for this?
It's actually quite funny that this should come up. I've just asked a few of the researchers here because I'm currently on King George Island in Antarctica, and you have a lot of various interesting individuals here you encounter, how they kind of cope with the increased stress and the dynamics of play. And as you both actually just mentioned, I've also discovered meditation for myself. I think you need something to calm the increased stress, escaping the laptop and the phone at times, and also engage in a bit of self-reflection on a daily basis. And I think, Charlotte, as you mentioned, especially the concept of transcendental meditation is a wonderful means to increase relaxed awareness in some form and get yourself on, without wanting to sound too strange here, on a higher frequency. But it's just kind of be a bit more astute with yourself. And I can only encourage others to look into it. I have a little group of friends with whom I do a morning session with every day, accompanied by an instructor, and it's brilliant. But again, each person needs to see what works for them. I do think what is a fact is that the current situation does make for an interesting platform for everyone to, in some form, learn about themselves more. One can deny it as much as you want, but fact is we are all mentally destabilized in some shape or form due to the crisis. Some more than others, but everyone needs to take certain steps to find their inner equilibrium. And I think it's only natural that you do shift your mindset because of a change in some form.
Absolutely. And I love when you said escaping the FOMO. That is something that comes up here in Manhattan all the time. Marco, you've been quiet for some time. How do you see it?
I don't have an awful lot to add. It was all so well said. Charlotte, probably the only thing that I would add, and something that I personally find very helpful is kind of highlighting the soft skills that we have typically as individuals, right? The listening skills, the interacting with others, because I think, as was rightly said, in some shape or form, we're all experiencing the same traumas, so to speak, right? And whilst some may be more visible than others, I think we're all experiencing it to varying degrees. So, what I find very effective is just simply listening, understanding, understanding that maybe when you're sitting on a conference call, there's going to be kids screaming in the background, or, folks that are dealing with a whole bunch of challenges, right, that ordinarily you wouldn't have in a normal work environment. So I think just having that understanding, that compassion, right, also lends itself not just to your own well-being, but also the folks that you're interacting with. And I think that's really important.
Wonderful. I have 2 more questions, but we run out of time. I'm so sorry. It was such a fun panel, as always, my highlight of the week. It was brilliant. Nice to see all of your faces smiling. And I would like to wish everyone a nice day. Oh, to all the listeners, thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. We are so blessed to have you on this podcast together. And now, with no further ado, I would like to hand over to Idilia, please.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and all the speakers. It was a great discussion, as always. I'd like to thank you, all the audience as well, and invite all of you to the events we are hosting tomorrow. So we have 2 amazing sessions, 1 billion lives, and a wake-up call, upskilling and reskilling. So stay tuned, stay next, and join the SAP Purpose Network Live. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.